Okay, so today we are starting a new series as we finish up the the summer report series, taking a look at the Central Division. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe as we take a look at the Central Division for the 2019-2020 season. All right, so taking a look at my predictions, I want to make that completely clear. They are my predictions on what I think the Central Division will look like at the end of 82 games next season in April. So, let's start things off. Taking a look, again, this is all, we're going to probably look back at this and say, oh, look how smart I am. I know so much. No, that's not going to be the case. It's more than likely going to be so wrong, but I don't know. I just have a feeling that this is what the teams are going to look like. So, starting off at, I'm going to go from the bottom to the top. So looking at the bottom of the division, working our way up. So starting off, we have the Minnesota Wild. So the Wild are continuing a rebuild. I think it's good that they brought in, a general manager like Bill Guerin, a new general manager. And I don't expect him to do an awful lot right off the bat. This year he's going to want to see what he has and then kind of move on from there. I don't expect him to be a quick movement guy. Maybe he shocks me because we don't really know much in terms of his management. He's done well with Pittsburgh, but this is a different situation. So, but I would more than likely expect him to wait, see what the players look like, see what players he likes, which ones, can stay, which ones can go. I feel like there's going to be there's going to be kind of an evaluation period this season for the Minnesota Wild. And probably next season we'll see a little bit more tinkering of the roster to try and, get this team either continuing to try and make the playoffs with Suter and Parise or starting a bit of a retool in the organization. I have the Minnesota Wild probably getting, probably between, high 70s, 80 points, something like that. It's going to be a tough year. I think Devan Dubnyk and he's going to be a huge piece of this team. He's able to steal games, so I think they're not going to bottom out super low. I expect them to be, out of the playoffs, maybe bottom 10 teams in the NHL. But again, that's no disrespect to the Wild. It's just I just don't know how I feel about that offense. It's a little bit shaky, and I love Zuccarello. I think he's a great addition, but you just, if Parise has to stay healthy, Suter has to stay healthy. There's just too many variables that give me question marks for me to really feel like this team is ready to go back into the playoffs. So now, we're taking a look at number 6 in the Central Division, and this may shock some people, maybe not shock some people. I have Stan Bowman's Chicago Blackhawks missing the playoffs again. I know, it's crazy, but that division is really good. And I think some teams did a little bit better than they did this offseason. Again, that's more my opinion. I just feel like the moves they made really weren't the best. I think that may end up really hurting this hockey team, unfortunately. So, there's just too many variables. You have Olli Maatta. He has to stay healthy first. And he hasn't been the best when he's been in the lineup. So, let's hope he can have a resurgence, maybe a new environment, a new scenery, helps him out. But those injury issues scare me a little bit. They bring back Andrew Shaw. It seems like they're just doing this thing again where they just can't move forward. They keep looking back. Bringing in Shaw, bringing back Saad. It really doesn't make much sense. So unfortunately, I think that is one of the big variables with this team. The good news is I feel a little bit more confident with the goaltending now. Even if Corey Crawford isn't in the lineup, you still have Robin Lehner or Colin Delia more than likely, as that third goaltender. So Robin Lehner, we saw what he did with the Islanders. If he can play this season as well, he is definitely going to be, he's probably going to be led into the starting role for the Chicago Blackhawks starting next season. Corey Crawford on the final year of his deal, Lehner on the final deal of his contract. So we're just going to have to figure out if Lehner can win that starting job. Unfortunately, though, I do have them missing the playoffs. Again, it's hard to count out a guy like Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, but even that back end, how much more does Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, how much more do those guys really have left in the tank? So, looking at teams that made the playoffs. So I had two Central Division teams making the playoffs in the wild card positions for next season, and one of them being the Dallas Stars. So I have the Dallas Stars, Jim Montgomery's team, getting back into the Stanley Cup playoffs. They had a pretty good run last season, knocking off the Nashville Predators in the first round, putting up a pretty good fight against the St. Louis Blues in the second. Unfortunately, though, they're going to be the bottom wild card team. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be a close fight. And again, you need guys like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin to step up big time. And the depth has gotten a little bit better there in Dallas with guys like Corey Perry, I think was a great addition. You had a guy like Joe Pavelski. So there's definitely some what-ifs with this team. That's why I have them in the wild card. I couldn't, make a good enough argument to put them as one of the division top three teams. But nonetheless, I have them making the playoffs. I think they have a good enough roster. If Anton Khudobin and Ben Bishop can play the way they did last year, or even close to that, I think Dallas gets back into the playoffs. So, now we have the first wild card. And I had the former Central Division champs, David Poyle's Nashville Predators. So, Predators, kind of interesting to me, as, some people are actually expecting them to drop back a little bit. And I hate to say it, but I think it's a little bit warranted. This team looks very different from last year. In certain positions, you bring in a guy like Matt Duchene, who I think is a huge upgrade to Kyle Turris. No disrespect to Kyle Turris, but I think that is a huge upgrade. That is a really good center core. You have Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene on the second line, and then you have on the third line Kyle Turris. So it leaves a lot of room. You still have guys, like Nick Bonino, Colton Sissons. That's a really deep center core there in Nashville. The only thing I have some issues with, I don't know what they're going to replace Subban with. Now, some say Subban is overrated. He didn't have a great year last year. And those are all fair arguments. If Dante Fabro comes in and is better than PK Subban, this is a great move by the Nashville Predators, and they're going to look like geniuses on the other side of it, meaning David Poile. Peter Laviolette is probably going to put him in. Hopefully he puts him into the top four. I think, Dante Fabro is an unbelievable talent, and he's probably going to get in that top four, if not at the start of the season, by the end of the season. So I have the Nashville Predators and the Dallas Stars in the wild card spots. As a quick recap, and I have the Chicago Blackhawks and the Minnesota Wild missing the playoffs. So now we're taking a look at the top three teams in that division. So at number 3, I have the Winnipeg Jets. So this team's definitely going to look different. I think that's why I kept them a little bit lower, because I am a little concerned about the Winnipeg Jets, surprisingly. I think the gap between the Predators and the Jets isn't going to be very much, even the Dallas Stars for that matter. So it's, again, there's too many variables that are still up in the air. We don't know what's going on with Patrick Laine. Is he going back to Finland? What's going on with Kyle Connor? Is he going to resign? There's just some variables here. Obviously losing a guy like Jacob Trouba, moving out Trouba, losing Tyler Myers in the offseason. So this was, there's definitely going to be some changes on this team heading into next year. And when you still have guys like Patrick Laine and Connor not signed, it definitely leaves you wondering a little bit. And you also lose a guy in the bottom 6 as well, and a guy like Brandon Tanev. So it's just a lot of guys that they lost this summer. And you just wonder if the young guys are going to be able to replace them. So I have them at number 3 in the division. I think if Connor Hellebuyck has a really good season, there's no reason this team has any issues making the playoffs. And if that defense can stay solid, you still have Byfuglien, you still have Morrissey, you have guys like that. That's going to be huge for the Winnipeg Jets heading into this season. And they're going to be relying on a guy like Neil Pionk as well, who they acquired with the Jacob Trouba trade. Okay, so now, things are getting interesting. So that leaves two teams left. So you have the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche for the top two spots in that division. So I have winning the Central Division, I have the Colorado Avalanche. Now hear me out. Hear me out. It's the Colorado Avalanche. A couple of years back, we remember when Nathan MacKinnon was drafted first overall. He came into Colorado, and the team went on to win the division that year, led by head coach Patrick Roy. They had an unbelievable season, and it was a turnaround story that we really loved. Unfortunately, they did get bounced in the first round. But nonetheless, they made the playoffs. They won that division pretty convincingly. And I would expect a season like that, again, from the Colorado Avalanche. I think there's going to be a major resurgence of the Avs this year. You bring in a guy like Nazem Kadri down the middle to help solidify the depth there. You bring in a guy like Jonas Donskoy from the San Jose Sharks. Great pickup there. You bring in, some other players who, are rookies who are coming in. You may see a guy like, Cale Makar is going to be back in the lineup. You lose a guy like Tyson Barrie, but it seems like he may fill that void. What about Bowen Byram? What's going on with Byram? Does he maybe make this roster, or is he going to need another year or two? So this is just the situation there. Is Tyson Jost going to come back and have a good season, which he really needs? Mikko Rantanen, another season of Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon. Oof, that is a really good line, as well as Gabriel Landeskog. And you add to some of that depth, like I mentioned, and a guy like Donskoy, who will more than likely fit well on that second line. Does Martin Kaut make the lineup? So there's some really good potential with this Colorado team. Again, the question is, goaltending. I'm a little bit concerned about goaltending. I love Philip Grubauer. I watched him play a couple games with the Hershey Bears, but I definitely have some concerns about Grubauer. He did not play his best last season. If it weren't for Varlamov earlier in the season, they probably may not, more than likely, they would not have made the playoffs because the gap was pretty tight toward the end of the year. So, they need a good season from Grubauer as well as the new backup. So it's going to be an interesting season. Francouz, coming in, he's going to need to play well because I don't know how many games Grubauer can truly play. Is he going to be able to play, 40 to 50 games this year and be a reliable goaltender, or are they going to rely a little too much on Francouz? But like I said, I think Colorado has a really good roster, and this is going to be a tough team to beat. And not that this division is necessarily weak, but I think it's just well balanced. I think we're going to see that with a lot of these divisions. I think really from, say, Winnipeg to Chicago, who are missing the playoffs, to the third seed in that Central Division, I think it's going to be really tight between Chicago, Dallas, Nashville, and Winnipeg. I think the gap is going to be definitely there. There's not going to be much room, but there is going to be, maybe 5 or 6 points, I think, between those 4 or 5 teams. So that leaves the second team in the division. I have the St. Louis Blues, the defending Stanley Cup champions. I think they get back into the playoffs. But again, there's another team I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they missed the playoffs. So, let me know what you guys think of my predictions, my tinfoil hat predictions. In all honesty, we really don't know who's going to win. Like I said, though, I think the gap is very small between these two teams. I would say the only team that concerns me the most is the Wild, who may slip the most. But even them, I think if you have Suter and Parise playing, really good hockey, Dubnyk stands on his head, this division is really competitive. And they were one of the best divisions in hockey for the past couple of years. I don't know if that's still the case necessarily. I think that may be the Atlantic, but we'll take a look at that when we get there. Let me know what you guys think of the predictions I have, and let me know what are your predictions for the top of the Central Division. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Thank you for watching us here at Goal Line Hockey. Make sure to check out our Instagram as well. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.